The sun had barely risen, but the line outside the tiny food truck was already stretching down the block. The smell of sizzling onions, grilled bread, and hot coffee filled the air, drawing in office workers and students rushing to grab breakfast before their day began. Behind the counter, with her hair tied back in a messy bun and her apron stained from an already long morning, stood Amara, a 23-year-old girl who owned nothing more than this food truck, her recipes and her determination to survive. Her truck was her world. It wasn't glamorous. The paint was chipped, the oven sometimes broke down, and she barely made enough to cover rent for the parking spot she leased. Yet for her, this truck was a dream born out of struggle. After her father passed away and her mother fell ill, Amara had given up her studies to run this business. Day after day, she cooked, served, smiled through exhaustion, and ignored the ache in her heart. That morning was no different, until she noticed a man step into line. He didn't quite fit in with the others. While most customers wore wrinkled shirts and carried backpacks, this man was tall, dressed sharply in a tailored suit, with a watch that gleamed under the sun. His shoes were polished, his hair perfectly styled. Everything about him screamed wealth and power. Amara rolled her eyes slightly. Another rich guy trying to play humble, she muttered under her breath. She'd seen his type before. Men who treated food truck workers like servants, men who looked down on her for smelling like grease and coffee. She tightened her apron and braced herself. When he reached the counter, he smiled. And it wasn't the arrogant smile she expected. It was warm, almost nostalgic. "One breakfast wrap and coffee," he said gently. Then, as Amara handed him his change, he leaned closer and whispered words that froze her in place. "Still remember me?" Her hands trembled. She blinked, searching his face, confused. Something about his eyes tugged at a memory she had long buried. 2 years earlier, Amara had been just a shy high schooler, bullied for wearing second-hand clothes and never affording the canteen food the other kids flaunted. But there had been one boy, quiet, awkward, sitting at the back of the class, who always noticed her. He wasn't popular, but he had kind eyes. He would sometimes slip her an extra sandwich, pretend he'd brought too much food, or quietly share his umbrella when it rained. His name was Adrian. Amara's heart skipped as recognition flooded her. This man, this millionaire CEO standing in front of her, was Adrian, the boy who once stood beside her when no one else did. But why was he here now? Why, after all these years, had he come to her food truck? She tried to mask her emotions, forcing a polite smile. "Sorry, you must be mistaken," she lied, sliding his coffee across the counter. She couldn't let herself get vulnerable. Not now. She wasn't that girl anymore who depended on kindness. But Adrian didn't look away. "I remember you," he said softly. "Amara. The girl who used to sit by the window and draw in her notebook while everyone else laughed at her. The girl who once shared her only lunch with me when I forgot mine." Her breath caught. She did remember that day. She'd split her tiny portion of bread just so Adrian wouldn't go hungry. How could he recall something so small after all these years? Adrian began coming to her food truck every morning. At first, Amara remained guarded. She served him like any other customer, refusing to acknowledge their past. But he was persistent, not in an intrusive way, but with quiet consistency. He would ask how her day was, compliment her cooking, even help carry supplies when he saw her struggling. Soon, rumors spread. Other vendors whispered, "Why is the CEO of the city's biggest firm eating at a beat-up food truck every day?" Customers stared curious. Some laughed, saying it was a PR stunt. But Adrian didn't care. He stood in line patiently, rain or shine, never demanding special treatment. Then came the first challenge. A corporate chain had started rolling out sleek modern food trucks in the same area, selling meals at dirt-cheap prices. Amara's sales plummeted. Her loyal customers began drifting away, tempted by shiny menus and promotions she couldn't afford. One evening, as she sat in her truck counting the meager earnings, tears blurred her vision. "Maybe I should just quit," she whispered to herself. That night, Adrian showed up, not in a suit, but in casual clothes, holding takeout from her truck. "You can't give up, Amara," he told her firmly. "This food, it's not just meals, it's you. Your story, your soul, your resilience. No chain can copy that." She wanted to believe him, but all she could think of were unpaid bills and her mother's rising medical costs. The second challenge came from within Amara herself. The more Adrian stayed, the more she felt the walls around her heart shaking. But she couldn't let herself fall for him. He was a millionaire, a CEO with a life of luxury. She was a girl barely holding her food truck together. They were worlds apart. "Why are you really here?" she demanded one night, her voice breaking. "Do you pity me? Is this some kind of charity project?" Adrian looked wounded but steady. "No, Amara. I'm here because I remember the girl who gave me hope when I had nothing. My family was broke back then. I know what hunger feels like, and I know what kindness feels like. You reminded me of that, and now I just want to remind you that you're not alone." Her tears spilled freely that night. But the storm wasn't over. A health inspector, bribed by competitors, showed up and threatened to shut her truck down over false violations. Amara fought desperately, but the fines were crushing. It was Adrian who stepped in, not by throwing money at the problem, but by connecting her with honest lawyers and rallying community support. He stood beside her, not as a CEO, but as the same boy who once held an umbrella over her head in the rain. Together they overcame every obstacle. Slowly, the community recognized her resilience, and people began choosing her truck again. Not because it was the cheapest, but because it was real, authentic, filled with love. 2 months later, Amara's food truck wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. She had painted it fresh, expanded the menu, and even hired help so she could breathe again. And through it all, Adrian never left her side. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the last customer left, Amara leaned against the counter, exhausted but happy. Adrian approached quietly, holding 2 coffees. "Still remember me?" he teased softly, just like that first day. She smiled through tears. "I never forgot." And in that moment, the poor food truck girl and the millionaire CEO weren't divided by wealth, status, or fear. They were just 2 people who had carried each other through storms and finally found their way back.